Welcome back. You're watching Trade of the Week. Today we bring you a technical analysis of some SA Inc. stocks against the recent rally from the Government of National Unity. We focus on Absa, Discovery, Sanlam and Truworths, and Loyiso Mpeta, a hedge fund manager for Unum Capital, brings us that analysis. Thank you so much for your time, Loyiso. It's been quite an interesting trading week that we've had because of the Government of National Unity. Of course, it seems that the GNU was the high tide that SA Inc. stocks were waiting for to lift them up, and we certainly did get a very, very good lift there, and particularly the banking stocks actually. And let's start off with Absa. Of course, one that fundamentally has really underperformed all the other banks, but as much as investors, look at the banking sector and it has underperformed, they still see some value, saying that it's still very, very cheap, and maybe it's good for investors to nibble in there as well. So let's start off with what you're seeing there on a technical front.
Yeah, okay, so before I even get into the stocks, I want to make a disclaimer.
Yes.
And my disclaimer is I'm not a politician, I'm not a political analyst, I'm not a political anything. In fact, beyond me casting my vote, I have very little involvement in politics. I am not insinuating that there's any causal effect between the political landscape that we're seeing with the GNU and the sentiment that we've seen on the JSE. Mm-hmm. It's hard to ignore that the sentiment has improved, but I'm not implying any causality. Okay. So just a disclaimer on that.
That's good to know. So we won't be calling you for any commentary on the political landscape.
Do not.
All right, well, let's start off with what you're seeing there with Absa, as we had seen the financials leading in that rally.
Yeah, so Absa is quite an interesting one. So let's go back to 2015. And I'm looking at Absa stock here from a 2-weekly perspective. One thing that strikes me with the stock price of Absa is we have these 3 significant peaks which form this very tight price zone between 203 Rand and 211. This is a very, very strong resistance zone. And I actually did this analysis for another private group back in April. And when I looked at this 3rd peak, another reversal pattern came to my attention, which is the head and shoulders pattern. We can see here a left shoulder, a head, a right shoulder. So what we have holistically is a large triple top, as well as on the 3rd top a head and shoulders. So my view on Absa was very, very bearish. And what we had at that time was 3 consecutive weeks of closes below what is known as the neckline. So my outlook on Absa was extremely bearish. But what we have seen recently, and this is one of the other things that I want us to touch on today, which is when technical patterns fail, meaning they become invalidated. Okay. How and when do we know that? So that's going to be part of our lesson for the day. So as much as we have this, what looks like a textbook head and shoulders pattern, what we have seen recently has not been a continuation to the downside, but it has actually led to a reversal. And there's something which is very interesting when I was looking at these stocks, which is consistent with all 4 of them. There is a significant bottom which first forms in mid-April, and then what we have seen over the last 2 weeks has been a strong rally, which let's call it the post-election rally. But the actual bottom was back in April, and we will see this recurring throughout all the 4 stocks that we are looking at now, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
So what am I seeing now from Absa's perspective? Now I'm zooming in on the daily chart. But what is good is there has been a strong uptick in volume over the last few trading days, which coincides with the post-election rally. So looking at it from a wave perspective, what I'm seeing from this April bottom is a wave 1, a correction for wave 2, and now we are in the wave 3 is unfolding also as 5 waves. Now at this juncture here, there's 2 ways I can look at this. I'm choosing to look at it from a bullish perspective, but I can also label this as a wave A, B, and C. So if it is a bullish outlook, it has to give us a correction for wave 4 and a further advance for wave 5. Now, at which point will I say, okay, ABSA is unfolding in 3 waves and not 5? It's if from the present juncture, even if we have this completion of wave 3, it starts to pull back aggressively and breaks below 157 and does not give us 5 waves, then I will take a back seat and say, well, maybe we are still in the bearish outlook. But if we get a full 5 waves up, then I will have to say that head and shoulders outlook that we had has been invalidated, especially if ABSA breaks above this previous all-time high of 211. So as far as ABSA is concerned, the fundamentals have not really been great as far as ABSA itself is concerned. So I'm looking at this rally more as a broader sentiment buying driven by the post-election, but not so much the underlying fundamentals. So as far as ABSA is concerned, there is still upside potential just to complete this wave 3, but it will be interesting what we get from a price action perspective as far as the wave model is concerned. And that is what will really give me real-time clues as to whether we are still part of that bearish outlook, or we can start looking more bullish and then invalidating all the triple tops and head and shoulders, which I alluded to earlier. So I'm a bit tentative on ABSA. I think the stock price action will give us all the answers that we need.
It's really quite interesting because the fact that you can't really figure out right now if it's 3 waves or 5 waves, whether it will go either in the bearish direction or bullish direction, I guess is also testament to the fact that we're not really sure if the impact of the GNU, this positive momentum, can last as well. And of course,
exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be quite interesting to see how markets react to the developments there in the political landscape. Talking about political landscape, Discovery was one of the stocks that were victim to the NHI sentiment around the NHI right before the elections, and quite, one of the stocks that was really, really beaten down. But we have obviously seen it also being one of the boats that have been lifted by the high tides lately. Let's talk about Discovery. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, so again, very important point that you've raised, and we actually last touched on Discovery in April, so it's quite recent, but there's something significant which again I want to highlight as far as technical analysis, the wave principle and chart patterns is concerned. So the last time we touched on it back in April, we had this very clear 5-wave advance. I was quite clear on this 3-wave ABC pullback, which was contained in this downsloping channel, and I emphasized that we are looking for a price reaction at this lower support trend line, and most importantly, to maintain the bullish outlook. Even though we had this strong sell-off, I still said there's potential that we are still part of a bigger bullish structure, as long as price holds above this key level of 100 Rand 73 cents. And what we have seen is exactly that. Price hit a bottom at 107 Rand 12 cents. So this is in cents, it can be confusing. And it held above this critical invalidation level. But also importantly, we can see how strong the volume has been in the stock over the last few trading days. And that's again how sentiment plays such a key role in terms of volume. And when you have very strong buying like this accompanied by high volume, that's when you know that your large investors are getting into the stocks. So that's what the key role that volume plays. It kind of validates the price momentum. So if we zoom in and look at the price trajectory now, what am I seeing from a wave perspective? So I'm looking at this as wave 1, wave 2, and now price is in the early stages of a higher degree, wave 3, and we can see the momentum is still strong to the upside for this wave 3. So this paints a very bullish picture for Discovery, because after this wave 3, then we can expect a pullback for wave 4 to complete wave 5. So again, similar to the outlook we had back in April, it has now been confirmed, validated, that the bullish outlook is still intact. And I think at current price levels, we still have a lot more upside potential. And unlike ABSA, if you look at Discovery's performance, especially I think they released their interim results back in March.
Yes.
They had very, very strong growth, double-digit growth in both earnings as well as operating profit and revenues. All three of their sectors performed very well, especially the UK Virgin Group. Also, when you look at how well, what's it called, the Cecil Med scheme, which just got incorporated into their business, profits already, so everything basically looks good. So maybe not Discovery, I forgot what it's called. Oh, was
Vitality.
Vitality, yes, doing very, very well. So I think from a fundamental perspective, very supportive together with the sentiment that we have now as part of the political landscape. So I think there's much, much more upside potential in Discovery.
Well, talking about also where investors have been buying Sanlam, fundamentals looking good as well. They're good diversification geographically, but also the different segments. Even now, we just had a deal that they have, taken a 60% shareholding in MultiChoice's insurance business. How's that looking? Because it seems like in an unloved sector, that one actually investors have been going in.
Yeah, very much so. And actually, I have to say this was probably one of the best calls we've made on the show. So going way back to January 2023, which is actually the last time we touched on Sanlam, I emphasized this massive three-wave correction, two-year bear market from March 2018 to March 2020. And I emphasized this advance as wave one with a very protracted expanding flat, which is a very complex pattern, which bottomed at 46.86. And you can see it was still in the early stages when I called this as a potential bottom and said that I'm looking upwards for wave three. And since then, price has not broken below that level and has continued upwards as we had forecasted. So what I've seen transpire is this wave one, wave two, very strong wave three. And again, what we saw in April now is a bottom in at 61.50, but this is for wave four. So the question is, how much upside potential do we have for this wave five to complete a higher degree wave three? And even after this wave three is complete, then the forecast is for wave four, wave five. So from a medium to long-term perspective, as far as the wave model is concerned, there's still a lot of upside potential in Sanlam. So I'm very bullish on Sanlam. So when we zoom in, we can see from this April 2024 low, a very strong rally, even before these elections, followed by a very shallow correction. And this shallow correction just shows that the underlying momentum is very strong to the upside. And what we've seen now has been this strong rally, let's call it the post-election rally. Though there hasn't been much change in volume, which is also good because it shows you that the volume has been consistent throughout this whole period. It's not only now suddenly that investors are coming into the stock. It's been a consistent thing. So what am I seeing from a wave perspective? This one, very simple. Wave one, wave two, currently in wave three with still very strong momentum. So the forecast short term is for a correction in wave four and further advancement in wave five. And as you said, from a fundamental perspective, also very good first quarter results, which they released, I think, in March. Very well, very good performance, basically everything growing double digits. And also just to touch on the deal that they just made now with MultiChoice. You know, when you look at it from a fintech verticals in terms of the synergies between the two massive brands, heavy investment in fintech, I think the timing of that deal couldn't be better for both companies. I think from a strategic perspective, it's likely to benefit MultiChoice more, but I think also from Sanlam's perspective, as their rationale for participating in this type of transaction shows that there's going to be a lot of upside for them as well. So I think in the future, it all bodes well and ties in nicely with the wave model, which is still very bullish on Sanlam.
All right, well, talking about upside, one of the sectors that have also benefited from the GNU is The retailers, even though we still don't have interest rate cuts.
Yeah.
True words. Let's go into that one.
Yeah, so true words also, we did look at it earlier this year, I think back in February. And we had this very strong rally which began in May of last year, but I was a bit tentative on this brief consolidation period here, which kind of gave me a look of a potential Head and Shoulders, which had this neckline, but it was very tentative. I wasn't overly bearish, but I wasn't bullish as well, so I was a bit of on the fence. But what I see now is very clear upside potential. So also a bit of an uptick in volume over the last few trading days. But going back to this January low, and we'll also again look at this April low here. What I'm seeing from a wave perspective is wave 1, and we have an expanding flat for wave 2, which bottomed in April. And again, we started off with a pretty small rally before this post-election one, which again, simple as wave 1, wave 2, and this rally now is for wave 3. So the forecast is for wave 4 pullback and more upside for wave 5. But I have to say as well, Truworths with their latest earnings didn't really blow the lights out. It was all very, very small, single-digit growth. But I think the stock is still very much resilient, and momentum is to the upside. So we are seeing pretty similar patterns in all the stocks. But I have to say that for Discovery and Sanlam, they're also supported by very, very strong underlying fundamentals, whereas the other two, they seem to be more driven by sentiment.
It's actually quite interesting seeing there with the waves, and I've seen that trend throughout all these stocks. What is it, that short pullback after the rally on wave 2?
Yeah.
Because a lot of us tend to panic
Yeah.
when we've seen a rally and then we all of a sudden see a pullback, but it's quite shallow. And then after that, then there's a strong rally there going towards wave 3. So really, really quite interesting, all these patterns that we are seeing there. Thank you so much for your time and just for giving us insights on the quantic mental aspects that you are seeing there with these stocks, particularly with the developments of the political landscape in South Africa. That was hedge fund manager for Unum Capital, Loyiso Mpeta.